So welcome. Tonight's class is Yin Yoga for women, women's health. And the focus is really on women simply because we can, and simply because it's International Women's Day is tomorrow, March 8th, and it's celebrated every year. And I like to use it as a way to remember all the women that I know and love. And also all the wonderful things about being a woman, and maybe some of the less wonderful things about being a woman. But today's practice, the Yin Yoga practice, is going to be a slower practice. It's kind of sometimes confused with gentle yoga, but as you will notice in today's practice, it's not necessarily gentle. It's just different, and it's different in that we're going to be holding postures in a passive way, so we're not going to be efforting as much as we're just kind of letting gravity do most of the work. And all the things we'll talk about are geared towards the spleen energy line, which lives in every body, regardless of whether you're a woman or not. So all of these practices are going to be helpful for every body, but I might be speaking a little bit more to some of the things that relate to women specifically. So we're going to start in a seated butterfly pose. One of the things I love about Yin Yoga is all the pose names are sort of nature related. So butterfly instead of bound angle. And butterfly is to bring your soles of the feet together and your knees wide. So if you sit, bring your soles of the feet together and the knees wide. And it doesn't matter to me how close you have your feet. You can bring them to some distance where it feels comfortable. And this is where some of you right away may decide, you know what? I want to be even more comfortable, so I'm going to bring some blocks, or you can have like a little pillow or a cushion underneath each side. And one of the reasons why we're starting here is that most Yin Yoga practices start with something that opens up the inner leg, because the Yin energy lines, including the spleen, live in the inner legs. It also gives us easy access to the feet. So I want you to, if you're comfortable and your toes aren't too cold, take your socks off so that you can actually hold on to yourself. And it can be very soothing to just hold your ankles. You can sit in an upright position here, or you can hinge slightly in a folded way. In general, see if you can effort less and let gravity hold you more. So that's where maybe you feel yourself getting a little bit heavier and a little bit closer to the earth. So if you look down at your feet, maybe it's been a little while since you've had cozy socks off, but the spleen energy line starts just inside of the big toe, comes up behind the ankle, sort of behind your tibia bone here, and up the inner thigh. It ends up going through here, this midsection, and opens to the mouth. And the spleen and digestion are very much interrelated. So I just wanted to give you a sense of, like, you could even trace that line with your hands from your big toe all the way up to the inner legs. At any point, if it feels good to sigh out through open mouth, feel free to invite that. Otherwise, breathe in and out through the nose as best you can. The spleen is in charge of building blood or qi in the body. It takes whatever food and experiences we ingest and transforms it into what we need for life. So it's really important for everybody, but specifically for women because of its role in blood formation and transportation of the blood, like where your blood is. Like if, for example, you're not getting blood to your toes, right? The spleen is partly responsible for helping transport blood where it's needed to be. It rules the muscles and the flesh. So sometimes Eastern doctors and Eastern medical practitioners like your acupuncturists might be able to tell a little bit about the health of your spleen meridian based on like how plump the flesh looks. Like you can just tell, not necessarily that muscles are developed and hard from working out, but just there's a general sort of plumpness to the flesh, freshness. I want to point out a couple of acupuncture points, and we're just going to gently massage them. And the first one is called spleen 6. So they exist on both sides, so you can pick whichever side. But if you take your hand and find your ankle bone on the inner side, right where it pops up, place your pinky fingers right on the ankle, top of the ankle, so that the 4 fingers rest moving upwards towards your leg. So it's about 4 finger widths up from your ankle bone, and then start pressing around underneath the tibia, so to the back side or the inside of the tibia. And you should kind of, after a little bit of poking, find what I like to call a fun ouch point, where it doesn't necessarily hurt, although it can be very sensitive, especially for women who might be cycling at the moment. But if you just gently hold that or very gently massage that with the thumbs or with the fingers, this is a really great point, together with another one in a moment, for building chi. Chi is life force. We want more of that. There aren't too many ways that we can build it. We're born with a certain amount, and then we use some of it up in life. Food and air give us more of it. Nice. Now let's go up a little bit to a nice partner one. If you flip your foot onto the floor, so you're going to kind of remember where that spot was, where you had spleen 6. And then we're going to go to the pair meridian or energy line, which is the stomach. So the stomach and spleen work hand in hand together. And this one is called stomach 36. You don't have to remember this, but if you're an acupuncture nerd like me, it's fun. Now this one I wouldn't poke too hard if you're currently pregnant. But for everybody else, it's safe. If you find your kneecap and then go down a little bit and then out to the outer side, there's sort of this like bony protrusion there that's not straight on, but it's off to the side. Go about 2 finger widths down from there, and there's sort of a divot, and it gets a little softer, not like super soft, but a little more fleshy. And if you poke around in there, you get another fun ouch spot where it's just a little bit tender. Those are usually the indications that there's an acupuncture point right there. Stomach 36, and you can massage there. And if you remember where the first one was that we did, you can kind of just hold the 2 or massage the 2 together if that feels okay. Now, one way that I used to do this with my senior teacher, Daniel Orlansky, is we used to just kind of bang on them, not hard, but lovingly. So each stomach 36 point, just to energize that, activate it. So that's another option that you can do if that feels okay for you. Stomach 36 has the nickname leg 3 mile because it was believed that after you were tired from walking and walking miles and miles, if you sat and activated this point and massaged it, you could go 3 more miles. Like that's how crazy awesome these points are. And together with spleen 6, which was the point by the ankle, they work really well together for building chi. So we're just spending a little time here, either massaging or gently hitting that point. All right. One more point before we move on to another posture. If you go back to your inner leg, kind of almost to the other side of the inside of the leg where you just were. Spleen 9. So if spleen 6 was down here closer to the ankle, imagine the line moving up towards the inner thigh. So just before you get to the knee, just before you get to the pit of the knee on sort of the back side. So I'm thinking like this back side of the tibia where the bone is. You can almost kind of fold your thumbs a little bit underneath there. You should find a spot, maybe a few fingers down, that can be pretty sensitive, this one, if I remember correctly. Yeah. You guys finding some of these spots? Like the fun ouch. Remember, you can do it for a little bit on one side. You can do both sides. Find it on each leg. And spleen 9 is wonderful, especially this time of year, because it helps to get rid of dampness. So if we think of like everything is melting right now, you know, the snow is melting, you're melting, you might be a little drippy in the nose. The spleen meridian is in charge of transition. So anytime you're transitioning seasons, it's going to be really important. Overthinking, overworking, those are things that deplete the spleen energy. So try to be a little gentler with yourself on those two fronts. And I'm just checking. I'm getting a message. Oh, I'm getting a message from Tracy, my acupuncturist. She said stomach 36 is very safe during pregnancy. So excuse me for that one. And spleen 6, which was the one by the ankle, is sometimes avoided during the first trimester. Thank you for the update there. Awesome. All right. So once you've done that, let's do just a little sweep. So if you take your hands through from the feet up and just kind of sweep the line. We've spent a lot of time in this butterfly pose, so go ahead and help your legs together, straighten them out. Maybe you even want to sweep the legs up and down a few times, just to iron out your legs. And then after holding a posture for a while in a yin way, we like to move. So go ahead and come around onto your hands and knees and start to move around. Maybe it's circles, maybe it's cat and cow, rounding your back and lowering the belly. Just any kind of movement, any speed that you like. Sometimes the body likes action and sometimes the body likes rest. So doing a little bit of both. Right after the rest, we take action. All right. And from here, if it's comfortable for you, go ahead and sit back onto your heels. If you prefer to have a little bit of height underneath, sometimes the block is a great way. And if the knees don't want to bend this much, then come up tall. The point of this next shape is to simply bring more length to the front side of the thighs. So some of you are going to stay more upright on the knees. Maybe bring your hands to your hips. If you're lower to the ground and it feels okay, maybe lean back, right? And that's going to help stretch and open up the front body, which is actually where the stomach meridian goes, right? After stomach 36 below the knee, it comes right through the quads on the fronts of the thighs. If it feels good to be more upright and lean back slightly, you can. Again, opening up that front side of the body. Or you can simply pause, take a few moments. And then slowly move forward onto your hands and knees again. And let's take our next shape called dragon in the Yin tradition. Step your right foot forward to the front of your mat in what feels like a low lunge. And this is where if you have blocks, they can be handy, but you don't necessarily need them. Now take some time and wiggle around. Sometimes when you land here, you don't really want to stay. You might want to move your back knee to widen your stance. You might want to shorten your stance, and you can come up high or you can stay down a little bit low. I'm going to go through a couple of variations of dragon. But start here and see how things feel, especially in this inner leg area. One of the things that can happen is that the bones kind of come up on each other. And so I'll share a little trick with you. If you take your front foot, lean back a little bit just for the sake of the experiment. Take your front foot out a little bit of an angle and then sink your hips forward. Sometimes it creates a little bit more room for the hips or the belly. If that feels more uncomfortable for you and you can relax here, then try that. The hope is that you can find a place where you can relax in the shape. So where you feel like your muscles aren't gripping or you're not pushing the floor away because the sensation feels too much. So keep adjusting your pose until you feel like you can kind of hang out in it. And in fact, you might take what one of my teachers calls the GQ version of the pose, where you hold yourself up with your forearms on your thigh or even your head if you're feeling tired. Really allow your body to sink. Let the muscular effort go. And then once you've set up your shape, see if you can feel where the breath is. Where do you feel it move? And in this way, Yin Yoga can be a very meditative kind of practice. And sometimes your brain is going a mile a minute, and that's okay too. They're both meditation. Take a few more moments here. And then let's explore another variation with the same leg. So we're going to keep moving here. Take your foot a little wider to the right. So go super wide on your mat. And bring your hands inside of the foot. Again, you can have the foot at an angle or not. It's totally up to you. And if your hands can comfortably reach the floor, great. That's another place where sometimes a block is really handy, where you can hold yourself up. And see how this feels. You might get some different sensations in the outer leg and the inner thigh, and you can choose. Does this feel okay? Do I feel good coming closer to the floor? And some of you may even be able to rest a forearm on a block or on the ground. I'm not that person today, but that's an option for some of you if it's possible. And then just like we did before, can you relax into the shape? That's where that open mouth sigh might really be helpful. And then where do you feel your breath move? And usually by around this point is where people realize this is not exactly gentle yoga, right? Because you're probably feeling some feelings in the hip, in the leg. And so try to keep the sensation somewhere between, say, a 2 to 5 at a scale of 1 to 10. So 10 being like extreme sensation. We don't want to be in pain. So we're going to back way off, and your level of effort is almost nothing. You're really relying on gravity. Okay. If you're happy here, you can stay a little longer. One more variation before we switch sides. So this next one might involve a little bit of a twist. So a couple of options. The first is if you're here closer to the floor and it feels possible for you to bend your back leg, that's going to be your left one for most of you, and lift a foot. Awesome. You might have to negotiate with your kneecap a little bit, and then you can stay right here. I realize there's some effort required in holding the foot up. So if your right hand can reach back and grab the foot, which mine cannot today, but if yours can, then grab the foot, and then you're able to relax again in the shape. Otherwise, you can stay here and hang out or skip the whole bent knee thing. If it would feel better to come up a little taller and turn to the right in more of the twisty part of this without grabbing the foot and worrying about that, then try that instead. So twisted dragon, with or without the foot grab. Take a couple moments wherever you are. Notice where you feel your breath. And then very slowly start to back yourself up. I like to do a little counter stretch before I switch sides to straighten out the right leg. Oh, so that the back of the leg gets a bit of a stretch instead. And then gently slide the right foot back. Oh, the legs love to be together. So take a moment here, shake it out. Sometimes something more active, like a downward dog, can feel good after the passive poses, especially to stretch out the backs of the legs. And then when you're ready to try the other side, I know it's been a while, but we still have to do dragon on the left. So when you're ready, take the left foot forward and start with the first variation. Take a moment, wiggle your front foot around, wiggle your back knee around. Maybe you come up with the hands on the thigh. Maybe you back the hips up a little bit. Or maybe you rest the hands on the floor or the forearms on the thigh. Lots of options here. Remember, the GQ version is available, or the thinker pose, right? And then try to let gravity hold you. So if you feel yourself wobbling a little bit, try widening your stance so you feel a little broader on your mat or against the ground. Where do you feel your breath in this shape? One of the interesting things about the Spleen Meridian is that it's really one of the sources of motivation and creativity. So I find it interesting that right now many of us might be in a moment where we lack some motivation and creativity after a year of much staying at home and general winter staying at home. And the hope with the yin yoga practice that we're doing is that we can move some of that potentially stuck energy. Let it move more freely. And when things move more freely, everything else works much better too, right? More ease. All right, if you're ready for inside dragon, take your hands down, walk the foot wider, and bring the hands inside the foot. Remember, you can have your front toes at an angle or have them straight in front. Don't do it because of the aesthetics. Do it because of how it feels for you. Does it allow you to relax inside the shape. I'll just turn this way for a moment. Again, you can have your hands on the floor or on blocks. Or some of you might find one or both elbows get a little lower. And maybe it's different on this side. Maybe this side you need to back off a little bit. Totally fine. Figure out where you feel like you can hang out for another minute or so. Where do you feel your breath in this shape? And if the sensation you feel starts to kind of sneak up on you and increase beyond that 5 out of 10, then change the shape a little bit, back off. If you're ready for the twisted dragon, maybe bend your back knee and see if you can reach for the foot with your left hand. Otherwise, perhaps come up a little higher and turn to the left, twisting ever so slightly. And again, it might be different on this side. Sometimes the foot magically appears, and sometimes something else is going on. Notice if you're grimacing or using muscular effort where you might not need to. Try an open mouth sigh. And then as you're ready, release the foot, untwist your body, and straighten out your left leg. Counter stretch. And then drag the foot back underneath you. And take a moment. Sometimes after being split apart, the legs just love being together. Child's pose might be calling you. If you're wanting something more expansive or young or energetic, again, downward dog is fantastic. You can make it dynamic and move around, or pause and hold and feel your strength. And then make your way back down onto hands and knees and all the way down onto the belly. If being on the belly is not for you today, then slide onto your back. We're going to come into the next posture, which is Sphinx pose. So the general idea is to have a passive back bend. So we're lifting up onto the forearms, and then that's where you get to make some choices. Do you want the elbows right under the shoulder? There's really no reason for it other than if it feels good. Do you want to change the shape of the arch and maybe walk your elbows forward? This is where it can get really therapeutic. Your forehead might rest on your forearm. And if you have a pillow or perhaps even a yoga bolster, you might play with bringing that bolster right underneath the crux. And of course, this is going to feel different for different people, so that you feel a little bit more supported in your Sphinx shape with a little bit of help from the pillow or the bolster. Now, some of you might take the TV watching mudra with your hands in your face. Or you can stay more up out of the shoulder joint. Totally up to you. Take a few moments here once you've found a shape that works. Try to relax the legs behind you. And notice where you feel your breath. Continue to be here. I want to offer another option for those of you who don't want to be on your belly today. If you're on your back, bend your knees and come into a supported or passive bridge pose. And that's where a block or that pillow can come in handy, because as you lift your hips, you're going to slide that underneath so that you can rest your low back there. And this just feels, oh, so good anytime. So feel free to make that choice too. We'll be here for just a little bit longer. If you're still on your belly, I'm going to roll back onto my belly and offer one more variation here to turn this into what's called a seal pose. So if you're on your elbows right now and you want to change it up, you can take your hands to the floor and straighten your arms and then start barking like a seal, right? No. If you'd like and your kids are around. And this is again where you can be up out of the shoulders or you can sink down in. It can also feel kind of nice to bring your chin down. Totally different for different bodies, so see if that feels okay for you. You've changed the arch though, so if this doesn't feel good, come back down or maybe walk your hands forward or wider and see if that feels better. And by better, I mean you're gonna feel some action in your back, some sensation. What you want is that really dull kind of sensation, not a pinchy, sharp ache. So keep it more close to the 2 out of 10 on the sensation scale. If you can breathe with ease and feel your breath in your body, that's a good sign. And then when you're ready, come on down to the belly. Pause for a moment, maybe shake or wiggle your bum side to side. If you were in the supported bridge pose, maybe take the pillow out from underneath you. And then slowly press yourself up and round your back into a cat from hands and knees. Big counter stretch. If you want to wiggle instead, make it more dynamic. Again, a chance for some movement after that stillness and holding. By the way, if you hear snoring, anybody hear snoring? Nama is really relaxed tonight. All right. One more chance for a downward dog pose, if it feels like the right choice. And then eventually walk your feet towards your hands and come into what I did say that the yin yoga postures has nice names. There is one exception. They call this one dangle, which just, it just doesn't do anything for me, but it's very evocative of the idea of dangling and letting gravity take hold. So this is where I like a little height under my hands. Even if I can reach for the floor, sometimes my body can just kind of settle a little bit better if something's underneath my hands. Take your feet any distance apart and any amount of bend in your knees. This is not about keeping the legs straight and straining. You're trying to let the bones and the connective tissues in the body hold you up. Now, if folding all the way doesn't feel good, take it more into the half fold. Hold yourself up with your hands on your thighs, or take an even wider stance. Be here for just a few breaths together, a few moments. And again, there's nothing fancy you need to do with your breath. Simply breathe in and out through the nose as best you can. And see where in your body you feel the breath move. All right. Grab the floor or the block with your hands and start to bend your knees even more. We're going to come into a squat. Now, squatting means different things for different people. It could be that your forearms are resting on your thighs and you're holding yourself up. If your knees let you bend a lot more, you might come a little lower. Ideally, your heels are still supported by the ground. Otherwise, we tend to grip. Now, if you're like me and you spent way too much time in point shoes growing up, that might not be possible. So one thing I like to do is fold up a blanket so it essentially gives me a 3-inch heel. And then I put my heels on the blanket, I widen my stance, and then when I come down, because most of us can squat with 3-inch heels on, you might have to adjust that a little bit. And sometimes that still doesn't work, in which case, stay up higher and support yourself with the forearms on the thighs. If you have blocks at home, that's another option you can take, which is to stack the blocks and actually sit on them. And I promise it's not cheating, because really the idea here is to open this part of the body, the inner leg line, and let gravity take hold. So we're trying not to effort. So find a place that works for you. Find a squat that works today. And if it's helpful or just feels good, you might even hold your face in your hands. And this is a chance to actually close the eyes. Let them rest in your palms. And notice where your breath moves while you're in this shape. The hands over the eyes and on the head almost signals to the brain, stop thinking too hard. Stop worrying too much. It's all gonna be just fine. All right. Gently take the hands away from the face. Take in the light around you and escort yourself off of the blocks. Oh, you can scooch everything to the side except for maybe your blanket, which you might decide you want to sit on. Take a moment, stretch the legs out or swish them from left to right like windshield wipers. And the next shape is one of my favorites. It's called dragonfly. That's part of the reason why I love it. It's also known as a seated wide angle forward fold. So I'm sitting up on a little bit of a blanket. You can too. It's always easier to slide off of it than it is to scooch it under. And then take your legs wide. You don't have to go super wide. I have extra long legs, so it might look that way. But somewhere where you feel a little bit of sensation or spaciousness in your inner legs. And then you can stay right here. If you want more sensation, you can walk your hands forward and then you can kind of press into your hands or arrange yourself on a block. Or some of you may have enough things to kind of snuggle with that as you lean forward, you can feel held by your blankets, your pillows, whatever you've got. It might take a little bit of playing around with that. One of the ways that I like to set up is if you have 2 blocks and a bolster or a big pillow, you set one block up tall, another one in the medium setting, so right next to each other, so that then your bolster or your pillow kind of folds at an angle. Now, this may not be the perfect angle, but for some of you, you might just be able to snuggle the situation. If that feels like too much of a fold, then back off. Don't worry about it for today. So here you can really open the inner line of the body where the spleen and the kidney and the third one I always forget, the spleen, kidney. Tracy's going to tell me in a moment. There are 3 energy lines that live in the inner legs. And really that attention to where the breath moves helps the energy to move through the meridian or the energy line. So can you breathe with ease? Can you feel held by the earth? Liver, thank you, Tracy. I knew I was forgetting one. Liver, spleen, and kidney all live in the inner legs, just different parts of the inner leg. Take a few more moments here. And when you're ready, scoop your legs up, help them together. Oh, and do whatever move feels good next. Usually a little togetherness. Maybe it's something much more active, like leaning back onto the hands and pressing the hips away from the ground. It could be a simple rocking or swish of the legs. Take a few moments here. All right. This next posture, we'll do a restorative kind of a twist. So if you start with your feet wide and let your knees fall to the left, and then keep your hands walking around in that direction till you get kind of around to the back. And your legs could be staggered or they could be slightly stacked. The idea here is to allow yourself to decompress a little bit in the twist. And then hold yourself up with a hand. So you might kind of wiggle a little bit, feel some extra space in the ribs. And then some of you might feel comfortable coming down onto one or both forearms, or even stacking the fists and resting your head there. That's where, if you have a collection of pillows too, you can bring them around to the side and snuggle with them over here. If you get down here and it feels like too strong of a pull for your lower right side, then bring your knees closer together. See if that feels different. This is one of those that invites a nice little snooze. So don't worry. I'll tell you when it's time to come back out. For now, see if you can feel your breath move while you're in this shape. And then start to walk your hands back up so you can roll around to the other side. Let your knees fall to the right and walk your hands around again to the back. Take a moment while you're still upright on the hands. Pause here. Especially when we twist, we can feel the differences in the left and right sides of the body. Sometimes twisting in one direction feels like, oh, amazing. And then you get to the other one and it feels a little more constricted or squishy. So see where you can set yourself up here to relax in the shape. And maybe that means snuggling the floor or your bolster. And maybe that means something a little different from the other side. Remember, your knees can come closer together. You can also kick your left foot back behind you for more sensation. And then relax into the shape. Take a few more moments here. And then slowly back your way out of the shape. Unwind. Take another couple of moments here. Perhaps a forward fold over the legs to feel even on left and right. Or maybe something more active like an upward table. Bend your knees, bring the feet and hands to the floor, and lift and lower your bum a few times. Doesn't have to be high. Now I want to set you up for our either final or next to final shape, depending on which boat you'll be in. So I want to give you two options. For those of you who aren't interested in legs up the wall, you don't want to scooch around or you don't have a good spot, I'm going to recommend a reclined butterfly shape. So we started in a seated butterfly, feet together, knees wide. Now we're going to recline, and you might be here for a little while. So I want you to be cozy. So this is where the blocks or the pillows underneath the outer thighs, maybe a blanket over your legs and your belly. Right? And if you have another pillow or something you can place behind you to support you as you come down, that might feel good too, like a bolster. If you don't have a bolster and you lie on the ground too, that's a wonderful choice. You might have to scooch around and find exactly where those blocks want to be. So that's option one. And you can always change your mind. Option two, if you have a blanket, you fold it up, or if you take your bolster and you find your spot near the wall, I'll show you a trick on how to make this as graceful as possible. The trick is to scooch one shoulder next to the wall and get as close to it as you can. So you're actually facing away from the place that you're going to end up. And then lean into the room and kind of cartwheel your legs up and then scooch that blanket underneath your bum. Now, for 99% of people, they actually don't like it if their legs are flush flat against the wall. So it's okay that you're a little further away. And it's totally fine that your knees might be a little bent. If you get here and you're like, something doesn't feel right, then maybe come down, try the reclined butterfly instead. Now, if you end up choosing legs up the wall and you start to feel your toes kind of tingle, then point and flex them, wiggle them around a little bit. If and when you choose to come out of the shape, because you might change your mind and you might want to come into a flat corpse pose at the end, just bend your knees, and just like you rolled up, you're going to roll to the side and come on out. Okay, so take a few moments and set yourself up for 100% coziness. Feel free to put on extra layers or socks. And then once you've set up your shape, exhale through open mouth. And notice the parts of your body that are connected to the earth or touching the support of a blanket or a bolster. And with each exhale, feel your body get a little softer, a little heavier, and a little closer to the earth. And give yourself permission to rest here for these next few minutes. Notice your breath. Where do you feel it move right now? Start to wiggle fingers and toes, maybe reach the arms up overhead. And wherever you are, scoop your knees together in close to your chest. If you're at the wall, gently rock to the side and maybe pause there for a moment. If you're in the reclined butterfly, scooch all your bolsters and blankets and things to the side and curl up into a ball. When the spleen energy is balanced, you find you have sort of an enthusiasm and you engage the world willingly. So my hope is that we freed up a little spleen energy tonight together so that you may move a little bit more enthusiastically into your week ahead. When you're ready, press your way up to a comfortable seat and bring your hands to your heart or to your belly. There's so much about being human that is kept secret, especially about being a woman. So part of my mission is to share all of the teachings I know that help make it just a little bit easier. So I hope you learned something tonight. Maybe you're going to poke around your legs a little bit and massage. And I wish you a wonderful rest of the day.